The first vulnerability that we're going to talk about is one of the injection vulnerability types. It's SQL injection. And SQL injection is one of those vulnerabilities that actually it's not that unlikely that even people outside of the information technology industry have heard about, but definitely anybody who's been a industry professional for even a year or less has probably heard something about SQL injection. Usually not in a positive light, since it is a pretty nefarious attack, and it's just one of those very kind of stereotypical application vulnerabilities. And it usually points to something along the lines of proper care was not taken. And so if we explore this topic a little further, we'll see that SQL, or structured query language, allows web applications to store data in databases. And most web applications, they store data as state for suppose activities of the users in there, or as their asset, like suppose they're collecting certain kinds of data, like stock data or something like that, and that's their business model, is reading and writing that kind of data. And if these websites have properly structured queries, then what we'll find is that something like SQL injection is harder to carry out. But most of the web applications and websites out there that use SQL in order to go to either their own or a shared database, they tend to have over time more and more complex SQL queries. And writing properly structured queries really requires a little discipline and really understanding how databases work and what SQL is, because SQL is not a simple programming language. It's actually a little more mathematical. It's a little more oriented around set theory, and it's a little more almost like calculus than it is like normal scripting. Even though there are things like SQL scripts, it's not really a language that you want to write a lot of your kind of automation in. And that's why for a long time there's been a profession called DBAs, database administrators, that is, and there's also been data architects, and just a lot of people who specialize in shaping databases, creating the schemas, and writing the scripts to get data in and out, doing things like materialized views and building data warehouses, and really a lot of stuff that really utilizes the maximum amount of power that something like SQL and relational databases provide. But the thing is, nowadays it's really a dying art, and so a lot of the rapid development nowadays it kind of bypasses the discipline of writing properly structured queries. And one important thing is, the benefit and why this is so lucrative to attackers to get at the data that's in the databases is because access to information nowadays is the new gold. I don't know if you've heard this, but there's an expression, data is the new gold. Being able to collect data, being able to then structure that data properly, infer interesting new things using machine learning from that data. All of these things are really becoming more and more valuable as the use of algorithms and AI really starts to speed up and get more popular. And so that, of course, means that as something gets more valuable, there are more criminals who are interested in getting it illegally. And that's why something like SQL injection attacks are going to continue, because the world is full of unsanitized inputs, and those inputs will always seem very tempting to attackers. And the thing that people also want to expose is restricted features. So suppose if there's a way to send in some malicious SQL through an unsanitized input, and that can result in giving someone higher privileges. If suppose you have database backed access control, if it lets somebody change themselves to be an admin, suppose on a popular gaming website, that's definitely something that's very tempting for attackers and can also be worth money. If you imagine, suppose a multiplayer game that has some loot or treasure or something that essentially is just a record in a database. A lot of players might be interested in trying to exploit the database and insert some tricky SQL to expose how to get that loot, like whether it's through getting information from the game or by just changing settings so suddenly they have things that they're not supposed to. And there's a lot of examples. Of course, it could be a lot more nefarious. It could be to do with my favorite standby banking websites or banking applications, where you could send in some SQL and make yourself a branch manager of the bank as far as the data is concerned. And then you can go in and look at people's accounts and look at their banking information and or health information on the health websites. So there's a lot of data and a lot of restrictions that can be exposed by poor SQL sanitization. And that's where SQL injection attacks come in as one of the top vulnerabilities. And that's also why we're going to take a look at how it's done in two different frameworks and languages. So we'll be doing that next.